My beloved brothers and sisters, one of the greatest sources of pain in life is depending on people for our happiness. We expect others to stay, to care, to understand us, and when they don't, our hearts break. But the more you chase validation, the more disappointed you become. Real peace begins when you stop expecting from people and start finding comfort in Allah instead. The Prophet ﷺ taught us that the strongest believer is the one whose heart depends only on Allah. Because when you rely on Him, you don't fear being abandoned, ignored or forgotten. You don't need constant attention or approval to feel valuable. You learn to stand alone with dignity, to heal without begging, and to smile without needing the world to approve. Being happy alone doesn't mean isolating yourself. It means building a heart that is complete with or without the company of others. Because when Allah is enough for you, no one can make you feel empty. Happiness comes from Allah, not from people. True happiness begins when the heart stops demanding from creation. Most people don't realize how much suffering they carry simply because they expect others to make them feel valued. You give people the authority to decide your worth by craving their approval. You hand them control over your mood, your self-respect, and even your sense of purpose. Yet people are changeable, fragile, inconsistent. How can something imperfect fill your heart perfectly? Real happiness is not found in the unreliable, it is found in the one who never changes. People can comfort you, but they cannot complete you. They may love you today and be distant tomorrow. They may understand you in one moment and misunderstand you the next. No matter how sincere someone is, they cannot carry the weight of your emotional needs forever. Human beings were not created to keep your soul alive. That responsibility belongs to the one who breathed life into you. Happiness collapses the moment you build it on mortal hearts instead of the eternal. When you seek happiness from people, you make your emotions dependent on their reactions. If they praise you, you feel good. If they ignore you, you feel worthless. If they change, you break. You spend your life trying to keep others close so you don't lose yourself. But the soul that depends on people is always anxious, always chasing, always terrified of being forgotten. It is not people you need to hold on to, it is Allah. The heart was created to be at peace only when it connects to its creator. You can fill it with entertainment, work, friendships, relationships or achievements, but it will still hunger for something deeper. The heart is like a lock, and the world offers many keys, yet none of them fit except the remembrance of Allah. The moment you turn back to Him, you feel a familiarity like you're finally home after wandering for years, trying to fit in places not meant for your soul. Happiness is not loud. It doesn't come from being seen, admired or surrounded by people. It comes quietly, like a secret conversation between you and Allah. It appears in sujood, when your forehead touches the ground and your heart finally stops pretending to be strong. It appears when you recite Quran and feel your chest soften as though Allah Himself is answering your confusion. Happiness lives in the unseen moments where your heart connects to its source. When Allah becomes your source of happiness, you stop putting pressure on relationships. You don't need people to constantly reassure you. You don't panic when someone pulls away. You don't break when someone leaves. You can love with kindness without being dependent. You can care without losing yourself. You can give without expecting anything back. Love becomes purer because it is not built on need, it is built on sincerity. The irony of life is that the more you depend on people for happiness, the more they disappoint you. And the more your heart depends on Allah, the more Allah brings the right people into your life without you chasing them. When the soul becomes rich with remembrance, the world becomes a gift instead of a requirement. You are happy with or without company. You are stable with or without attention, because your heart has already found its nourishment. Many people fear loneliness not because they are alone, but because their happiness is external. They need noise to distract them, affection to feel worthy, and attention to feel alive. But loneliness becomes peaceful when your heart is accompanied by Allah. You no longer need company to escape yourself. You become friends with your own soul. You are no longer running from silence, because silence becomes a place where Allah fills you with calmness. Allah does not ask you to isolate yourself only to free your heart from depending on creation. You can enjoy people, work, success and family, but your happiness should not collapse if they change. True emotional freedom is when everything you love enhances your connection to Allah, not replaces it. When the heart is full of Allah, life becomes balanced. You love others without losing yourself, and you stand strong without needing anyone to hold you. When you choose Allah over people, you do not become detached, you become complete. You stop using others as emotional bandages. You stop begging for support. You stop expecting others to heal your emptiness. You start giving love from a place of abundance instead of need. Happiness becomes a relationship with Allah that strengthens every relationship around you. Love becomes healthier when it is not feeding your insecurities. Happiness grows every time you worship with sincerity. Salah is not just a ritual, it is medicine. Dhikr is not repetition, it is nourishment. Quran is not recitation, it is oxygen for a suffocating soul. When you are distressed, the Quran removes heaviness. When you feel lost, dhikr anchors you. When you are overwhelmed, salah clears your heart like rain washing dust from a window. The heart is most alive when it remembers its creator. It is not the world that makes life beautiful, it is gratitude. Even small blessings become precious when you see them through Allah. A simple cup of water tastes sweeter. A quiet moment becomes meaningful. A small act of kindness feels profound. Gratitude does not change your life, it changes your vision. And when your vision changes, your life suddenly feels rich without needing more. The world constantly tells us that happiness depends on achievement, popularity, love, or wealth. But the heart knows better. It doesn't crave applause, it craves peace. It doesn't crave ownership, it craves contentment. It doesn't crave being surrounded, it craves being understood. And no one understands you more than the one who created you. Allah knows the contradictions in your heart, the battles in your mind, and the secrets behind your tears. A meaningful life begins when you ask less from people and more from Allah. Instead of saying, make me happy, say, make me grateful. Instead of saying, take away my pain, say, give me strength. Instead of saying, change them, say, purify my heart. Happiness is not having perfect circumstances, it is having a heart that trusts its Lord in every circumstance. When your happiness comes from Allah, the highs of life do not intoxicate you and the lows do not destroy you. You become balanced. You don't become arrogant when blessed, and you don't become hopeless when tested. You see blessings as opportunities to thank Allah and trials as invitations to return to Allah. Your heart is not controlled by swings of emotion, it is anchored by faith. You stop trying to make everyone love you. You focus instead on becoming someone Allah loves. You stop needing compliments to feel confident. You stop needing attention to feel seen. You stop letting people define you. You begin to define yourself by how close you are to Allah. The world's judgment becomes irrelevant compared to Allah's acceptance. And that shift brings peace deeper than applause ever could. The heart that depends on Allah becomes a giver. It comforts others without expecting comfort back. It supports others without seeking recognition. It loves without controlling. It forgives without bitterness. Such a heart is powerful because it has stopped needing anything from creation. It serves Allah through serving people, but it does not serve people to feed a starving ego. It becomes a source of light instead of a seeker of validation. When you feel empty, it is not a sign you need more people, it is a sign you need more connection with Allah. When the soul is unfulfilled, it begins to drain relationships, jobs, and pleasure for meaning, but nothing created can fill a void that was designed to be filled by worship. The emptiness you feel is not a flaw, it is a compass pointing you back to your Lord. Do not run to the world when your heart is hurting, run to Allah. Do not search for someone to fix you, ask Allah to heal you. Do not wait for someone to understand your pain, tell Allah what no one else can hear. Happiness flows from being close to Allah, not from being close to people. And the closer you are to Him, the more peaceful you become with or without others. When you finally allow Allah to be your comfort, your support, your listener, your provider, your refuge, your friend, happiness stops being fragile. No one can break you with their absence, and no one can control you with their presence. You stop living for attention. You stop fearing rejection. You stop chasing love, because the heart that finds its happiness in Allah becomes unbreakable, complete, and beautifully free. Let go of expectations to protect your peace. Most of our emotional pain does not come from what people do to us, but from what we expect them to do. We assume others should care the way we care, understand the way we understand, or love the way we love. When they don't, we feel betrayed. But the real betrayal comes from our own expectations. We create an image of how someone should behave, then punish ourselves when they act according to who they really are. Peace begins when you stop demanding from people what they never promised to give you. Expectations are invisible contracts you write without the other person's consent. You expect a friend to check on you, a family member to appreciate you, or a partner to always understand you. Yet you never asked them and they never agreed. When they fail to fulfill your expectations, you call it disappointment, but it's really the collision between reality and imagination. Letting go of expectations doesn't make you cold, it makes you free. Letting go of expectations does not mean you stop loving people, it means you stop suffering because of them. You can care without demanding care back. You can be sincere without needing reciprocation. You can do good without waiting for applause. When your heart no longer waits for others to complete it, you experience a love that isn't heavy, a friendship that isn't exhausting, and a life that isn't full of emotional debt. When you stop expecting from people, your relationships become healthier. You begin to appreciate what they give instead of criticizing what they don't. You become grateful for sincerity instead of hunting for perfection. You start valuing effort instead of measuring flaws. You realize that no one is obligated to heal your wounds, carry your emotions, or live up to a version of themselves you have in your mind. Acceptance is the soil where peace grows. Expectations turn kindness into currency. When you do something good hoping to receive something in return, you end up disappointed. But when you do good for the sake of Allah, the heart becomes weightless. You no longer say, I did this for them, and instead you say, I did this for him. Your reward is no longer delayed because Allah sees what others overlook. You free yourself from the emotional debt of waiting for humans to repay you. The less you expect, the more you observe. You begin to see the real nature of people without the blur of desire. You see who loves genuinely, not because they give you everything, but because they try. You see who cares through small gestures, not dramatic expressions. You understand that love is not obvious in words alone. Sometimes it's hidden in subtle patience, quiet understanding, or silent loyalty. Letting go of expectations sharpens your vision of sincerity. When you expect others to never hurt you, you forget they are human. Humans are imperfect, emotional, forgetful, and sometimes selfish, just like you. Expecting flawlessness creates pressure, resentment, and emotional distance. But when you allow people to simply be human, you forgive with ease, let go without bitterness, and love without fear. Imperfection stops being a threat and becomes a reminder that we all need mercy. Letting go of with yet. Think about what happens to a child who has been sleeping in the same bed for 10 years. At 7, the bed was perfect, the right size, the right fit. At 17, the same bed feels like a trap. The child hasn't become worse. The child grew. The vessel became too small. Your soul works this way. There are seasons when your worship is in perfect alignment. The habits, the community, the rituals all match where your spirit is. And then there are seasons when Allah begins to call you to a depth that your current practices cannot reach alone. The old structures feel hollow not because they are wrong, but because your soul has outgrown the version of faith that fit you 3 years ago. What Allah is asking you to do in this moment is not try harder, it's listen closer. The emptiness is not an absence of Him, it's an invitation toward Him, a different kind of presence, a more mature relationship, one that doesn't just rely on routine but on genuine seeking. Stop running from the discomfort of spiritual drought. Sit in it with open hands. Ask Allah what He is trying to give you that your current posture can't receive. The answer will not arrive loudly, but it will arrive. 2. When the things you prayed for stop feeling like enough. This one is particularly disorienting because it seems almost ungrateful. You worked for years to reach this place. You made dua with tears for this job, this relationship, this home, this life, and Allah gave it to you. You received the thing you begged for, and for a while it was everything you hoped. Then, without warning and without a clear cause, the sweetness began to recede. What felt like an answered prayer is starting to feel like a holding pattern. The blessing is real, but the joy in it has dimmed. And you feel terrible about it. Who complains about getting what they prayed for? But this fading of worldly sweetness is one of the most profound forms of Allah's mercy, even though it rarely feels that way from inside it. The dunya was never designed to satisfy at a soul level. everything in it is by nature temporary, and the deeper in your faith you grow, the more clearly your soul begins to register this reality. What is happening is not ingratitude. Your heart is waking up to a truth it couldn't fully feel before. This was a gift, but it was never the destination. Allah gives us blessings in the dunya that are in part meant to point us toward Him. When the blessing itself becomes the stopping point, when we settle into the gift and forget the giver, He gently removes the sweetness from it. Not to take it from you, but to show you where your actual hunger comes from. You've been mistaking the meal for the chef, and Allah, with infinite patience, is redirecting your appetite. This is not the time to chase a new version of the same worldly satisfaction. It's the time to ask what your soul has actually been hungry for all along, and to move deliberately and trustingly in that direction. The feeling that your comfortable life is becoming uncomfortable is not a malfunction. It's Allah preparing your heart for permanence rather than just pleasure. 3. When Allah pulls you into solitude and it feels like punishment. Nobody tells you how disorienting the season of solitude is when it arrives. Friends drift without a clear reason. Invitations slow down. Conversations that used to feel natural start to feel forced. Gatherings that should leave you energized leave you strangely empty. You come home from social situations feeling more alone than if you'd stayed by yourself, and you start to wonder what you've done wrong, what signal you're sending, why people are pulling back. Here's the answer. You're not sending a wrong signal. You're sending a different one. And the people in your orbit who were connected to the previous version of you can feel that something has shifted, even if neither of you has words for it yet. But there's something even more important happening beneath the social surface. Allah is creating conditions for revelation, for the particular kind of inner work that crowds make impossible. Noise has a way of making the soul think it knows itself better than it does. The constant reflection of other people's expectations and perceptions substitutes for the deeper work of actually sitting with who you are in the sight of your Creator. When He pulls you into silence, He is removing the substitute. Consider the prophets. Muhammad, peace be upon him, retreated to the cave of Hira repeatedly before the first revelation descended. He wasn't in community, consulting, discussing. He was alone, seeking, unsettled by the state of the world, reaching toward a truth he couldn't yet name. And it was in that specific aloneness that Allah spoke. Musa, peace be upon him, was called to Mount Sinai alone. Not with advisors, not with his people, alone. And in that solitude, he spoke directly with his Lord. Yunus, peace be upon him, was in the belly of a whale, total isolation, total darkness, total removal from the world. And it was there that his tasbih became the vehicle for his rescue. There is no deity except you. Exalted are you. Indeed, I have been of the wrongdoers. Surah Al-Anbiya 21 to 87. This is the pattern. The greatest transformations in prophetic history happened in solitude, not in crowds. And when Allah is preparing you for something significant, something that requires a version of you that has not yet existed, He will often bring you into that same silence. Don't interpret the quiet as rejection. Interpret it as selection. He is pulling you aside because He has something to say that can only be heard in stillness. And what He speaks in that season will shape you in ways that no community gathering could. Let the silence be what it is. A sacred conversation between you and the one who knows you more thoroughly than any human ever will. 4. When your plans keep collapsing despite your sincerity, this one tests the faith in a particular and painful way. You are not pursuing dunya for its own sake. Your intentions are aligned, you've made istikhara, you've worked hard and planned carefully and prayed with genuine tawakkul, and then the plan falls apart. The job doesn't come through. The door you were certain Allah was opening turns out to have been closing. The opportunity dissolves at the last moment, after everything seemed settled. and you sit in the rubble of something you built sincerely, asking the hardest question a believer can ask: why? I want to offer you a frame for this that goes beyond generic reassurance. When Allah interrupts plans made with sincere intentions, one of two things is usually true. Either the destination was wrong or the timing was wrong. Both are acts of love, not abandonment. And both require the same response from you, not frantic rebuilding but deliberate stillness. Because here is what scrambling does. It prevents you from receiving the redirect. When a plan collapses and we immediately start constructing the next plan, we skip the lesson embedded in the collapse. We miss the information that the interruption was carrying. And then we walk toward a new version of the same mistake, slightly rearranged. What Allah is asking for in those moments of collapse is the most difficult thing He can ask. Stop, lower your hands, open your palms, and say not what do I do next, but Ya Allah, what are you trying to show me? Yusuf, peace be upon him, had a dream that showed him his elevation. He had every reason to believe greatness was coming. What he could not see was the decades of detour, the well, the slavery, the prison that would shape him into someone actually capable of holding the greatness his dream had shown him. Every interruption was preparation, not punishment. The plan that collapsed was the one that needed to collapse. Not because your intentions were flawed, but because you were not yet the person who could walk into what was next. Allah's interruptions are not setbacks. They are curriculum. They are the syllabus of a course you didn't know you were enrolled in until you found yourself sitting in the classroom of a fallen plan. The student who resists the lesson stays in the classroom longer. The student who surrenders walks out changed. 5. When the people around you feel like they're in a different story. This one arrives quietly, which is part of what makes it so difficult. You don't wake up one morning and think, I've outgrown my people. It happens gradually. A conversation leaves you flat in a way it used to leave you energized. A gathering you look forward to ends with you feeling strangely hollow. A friendship that was once the most natural thing becomes something you have to manage, translate yourself for, perform within. And you feel a complicated guilt because these are good people. They haven't done anything wrong. The distance isn't because of conflict or betrayal. It's something quieter and harder to name. You're no longer in the same place spiritually, and the gap is growing. This is what happens when Allah lifts you. Elevation is not always dramatic. Often, it's a slow clarification, the soul becoming more precise about what it needs, more honest about what it's willing to tolerate, more aligned with where it's going. And as that clarity grows, certain relationships start to feel like they're pulling in a different direction. The test is not whether this happens. It will happen. The test is what you do with it. Whether you shrink yourself to preserve relationships that are comfortable but no longer nourishing, or whether you honor what Allah is growing in you, even when that means walking a season with a smaller circle. The Prophet, peace be upon him, stood alone at the beginning. He had one wife who believed, one young cousin, one close friend. His community, the people who had known him his entire life and called him Al-Amin, rejected him. Not because he had become worse, because he had been called to something higher than they were ready to follow. Allah did not leave him alone. He filled his life with companions whose quality of presence matched the quality of his mission. People who didn't just like him, they believed alongside him, sacrificed alongside him, prayed alongside him through the night. What you are experiencing when your circle thins is the preparation for replacement. Not with more people necessarily, but with better ones. People whose faith calls yours forward rather than back, whose company feels like ibadah rather than compromise. Trust the thinning. It's making room. 6. When you are exhausted despite doing everything right. This specific exhaustion deserves its own category. It is not the exhaustion of the neglectful person who has been avoiding their deen. That exhaustion is familiar. It comes with its own weight of guilt and distance. This is different. You are praying, you are reciting, you are maintaining your obligations, you are genuinely trying, and yet the weight on your chest doesn't lift. The tears won't come in sujood when you want them to. The words of dua feel real, but somehow don't reach the depth they used to reach. You're doing everything right and still feel spiritually threadbare. This is not hypocrisy. This is not a sign of rejection. This is a specific kind of soul weariness that Allah recognizes and responds to with a particular tenderness. He says, indeed in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. Surah Ar-Ra'd 13:28. Notice what He offers. Not just reward, not just progress, but rest. He knows your heart gets tired. He designed the human soul, and He designed it with a need for renewal that goes beyond religious productivity. We have created in many believers a spirituality of performance, of checking boxes, completing recitations, finishing the daily quota. And when we become exhausted by that performance, we think we've failed. But what has actually happened is that we've been invited past performance into presence. Allah doesn't need your worship. He wants your heart. And sometimes the most honest thing you can bring to prayer is exhaustion, not a polished, composed performance, but the raw, barely holding together version of yourself that says, Ya Allah, I have nothing left. I don't know what I need, but I'm here because I know you're here. That prayer, the one made from depletion rather than abundance, is one of the most powerful prayers available to a believer, because it is entirely free of performance. It is pure need, directed purely at the one who can meet it. Don't push through this exhaustion with more spiritual productivity. Lean into the stillness. Let your Rabb see you in your weakness. He meets broken people in their brokenness with a mercy that sufficient people rarely experience. Rest is not a detour from the journey. Sometimes it is the deepest part of the road.